hi Samir. I want to talk to our Brazilian audience about your work, including the book, but everything around the context, the juicy stories, everything. So, how does your story start in this world?
Well, first, first, my mom and dad had me in New York a long time ago, right? And then I was born in Canada, raised in Canada for a while, moved to India, and then moved to Singapore. So I've been bouncing around all my life. I was, jokes aside, I was trained as an integrated circuit designer, which is electronics engineering. But I started working as a macroeconomist for the Central Bank of Singapore. So I was heavily involved in policy work, building investment frameworks, and building strategies for how to grow Singapore's international financial center. Post that, I got really attracted and excited by technology in finance. And at that time, I stumbled on as a mature startup, not really a startup, a mature startup with a good presence in the US. And they were looking to expand to Asia, and they didn't have anyone in Asia. And they had just started expanding in Europe. So I came on board, and we built a fantastic company, which I subsequently exited in 2011. The company is listed today on New York Stock Exchange, the overall global entity. And
What company is that?
it's called KCG, Knight Capital Group, but our company is Getco LLC. Knight Capital Group is a client-facing brand that we acquired, and we are mostly in the institutional space. So the average guy on the street doesn't know us. So for the average guy on the street, it makes more sense to maintain that specific brand. Post that, I've been working with a lot of tech startups globally. My main focus was to think about how to decrease mortality of startups in emerging markets. Because when you think about the US, Canada, or any of our more Western developed nations, we've got very strong support systems. And even with that, 1 out of 10 startups fail. Now imagine you move a guy starting in Nigeria or starting in India or Brazil, the chances of success just drops exponentially because they don't have the right support system, they don't have role models, they don't have deep enough talent pools, and blah, 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 blah. So the idea was to figure out what can be done to improve this a little bit.
But again, do you think Andy Grove, Steve Jobs, Michael Dell all had like this type of support when they started and became our heroes?
Absolutely. Think about it. Even Andy Groves, let's say, starts out in the valley, and it's you have to understand one thing. A lot of things. San Francisco is a special place. People share ideas without any hesitation. People talk a lot to each other. Engineers will call up another engineer who's working on the same technology without any hesitation. On any technology you pick, you have at least 30, 40 people to talk to, out of whom 10 are the world experts, right? So it's not a formal government-driven support system. It's a support system that has evolved organically, right? And let's say when Andy Grove gets to a point where he needs to expand, guess where he can find his engineers? Right at his doorstep. To give you an idea about when in our startup, our office in Singapore, initially, I thought we were just going to hire Singaporeans. Unfortunately, by the time we got a bit more mature, we had hired 90 to 95% expats. All Americans or Western Europeans. It was really, really hard to hire in Asia.
Any Brazilians?
No Brazilians at that point of time. Yeah, but since I've led the company, I think we have a Brazilian presence now. We still run it out of New York, but there's quite a few Brazilians on board at the moment. So this experiment with startups I started in Chile. So we started in Latin America because Startup Chile was doing this really cool thing, an experiment of throwing in some seed money and seeing if companies work. So I invested in one company and put it through the Startup Chile program as well, and to watch what happens. And
You did invest as a person or as a fund?
as a person, angel, yeah. And all my investments are as an angel investor. They're small tickets. They're between $20,000 to $250,000. It's nothing big. It was more a process for me to learn as well, what's going on.
It was someone you have met before, like the founder of this?
It's a very close friend. All the investments are close friends who are quitting their corporate jobs and they want to do something that they've always wanted to do. So I've supported them at that stage, and then they've jumped out and done things. So we started working with startups in Chile, and then in the last 3 years we ended up working with more than 50, 60 startups spread over like 20 countries, right? Some virtually, some physically. We're bouncing around the world at this time, staying in Chicago, staying in London, all these kind of things. And what we noticed was most of the startups were facing very similar problems. And a lot of the problems were understanding company building. Because a lot of the times founders have a great technical idea and they have great engineering capacity or they have marketing capacity, but they don't understand how to build a company. A company and a product are not the same thing. And once you build a product, how to sell it and then slowly scale the operation and build a company is a very hard learned lesson. And you pick it up faster if there is role models in your ecosystem. So that's missing. Second, you have to be careful with what business models you pick to build. Risk capital in Latin America or Eastern Europe or in Asia is very low at the moment. It's changing. What that means is you can't build a negative cash flow business. Like Facebook is negative cash flow for 4 years, right? You can't build that in Brazil. It doesn't exist right now, the support for these kind of business models. What you have to build is you have to understand if you're going to go down that road, what's your investor's risk tolerance? Oh, he can go negative cash flow 2 years. Okay, Easy Taxi works because I can hit it up to that point. Although Easy Taxi is a bad example because they're backed up by rocket internet with massive resources, but like those kind of apps.
There are more like Que Canto out of Brazil, backed by strong VCs, chose to remain 2 years without trying to charge for anything.
Oh, that's really fantastic. I wasn't aware of this, so this is very, very good. And so as we worked with all the startups and noticed these problems, especially how much noise there is in the formal ecosystem. When I say noise, what has happened is you have to think about it in a macro context and bring it down to micro. At a macro context, we've had the worst crisis in like almost 90 years. There are not a lot of jobs. So for politicians, the easy hero is the entrepreneur. Because no matter what policies they're trying, they can't create jobs. So if you throw out 40, 50 grand on the entrepreneur, you look like a hero. Some guy gets a shot, which is a good thing. But Google is not built with $50,000. To build companies that are going to create a lot of jobs, you need to systematically support them through a certain, a lot of stages. And that's not just the government's job. It's a lot of things coming together. Universities, corporates, research institutes, enterprising individuals, culture, family support, all of this stuff.
Do you think this message that you cannot build Google with $50,000 is a message more to entrepreneurs or to investors who once they feel something shaking, oh no, I'm stopping, I'm not following?
I think it's more to the investors. To the entrepreneurs, I would say be more strategic with that $50,000. You can build a Google in a different way. You can always find a way. What I mean by that is there are many ways you can support yourself. If I'll give you an example from our startup in Chile, right? So we're selling B2B, pretty heavy like pricing based intelligence to big retailers like 3M and Santa Emiliana and all of these guys. Now you're a young company, right? You have no money. Nobody trusts you. They don't think you'll be alive in two more months. How do you sell to a company that has 16,000 employees like AgroSuper? So what we did is for money, first we loaned out a lot of our devs to San Francisco startups because we were cheaper to code for them out of here while they were also working on our projects, building our pilots and all that stuff. So the cash flow keeps going. Second, we set up a consulting arm which was outsourced. So we taught the companies how to use our product and we consulted on that, improved their business processes, then introduced the product in. And to lead the consulting business, we onboarded people who were retired ex-GMs of like Accenture. So they have a lot of credibility. It's not a 29-year-old smart kid anymore. Suddenly you have the ex-CEO of Accenture or somebody of that stature selling on your behalf. And he knows all the other CTOs and CEOs. So it's a reality of how you do business in Latin America, how you keep your cash flow running. And this is not a universal solution. That was good for that situation. In a different context, you want to do something completely separate and different. All I'm saying is, do not read books and think, this is how I'm going to build a company. And this comes from a guy who just wrote a book on how to build all his technology companies. And the book we wrote is called No Startup Hipsters. It's available on Amazon for whoever wants to read it. The book is more, how do you make decisions? It's decision frameworks. How do you find your solution to your problem in your context with your resources? The first chapter in the book is called Take My Advice, Don't. So it talks about why you never follow advice blindly. Take tactics, take strategies, but be very conscious and very deliberate. Where you are, who are you trying to sell to, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and then what should you do based on that. I hope that helps a little bit. Best of luck. You're in a very sweet spot right now. India was sort of in this spot about 10 years ago in terms of startup culture. China was here maybe 15, 16 years ago. China is booming, by the way, right now. When you look at the startup ecosystem, it's just most of the rest of the world doesn't know about it yet, which is really, really funny. But I have a very high rate of confidence in Brazilian entrepreneurs as long as the government can get out of the way. The government needs to get out of the way. They need to learn from countries like Britain, where Britain understands, the bureaucracy is pretty stifling for small corporations. So they have set up separate government entities to help solve small companies, because you can't just change your laws. The laws are valid for Shell, the laws are valid for large British companies or BP. But give a little bit of support to the startups so you create a hole that they can go through and they can build. I think if Brazil manages to do that, you guys are going to really create some impressive companies here. The talent is incredible.
One final question. You seem very confident and you are writing about decisions. So does that mean, after your comments about what Brazil might become as China, for example, does it mean you are about to invest in Brazil?
Sadly, no. I think it's right now I'm at a different stage where I've been investing for a while and I've gotten a little bored, because it's a great lifestyle. You meet a lot of smart people, but they're doing the real work. And I feel like it's too early in my life to kick back and relax. I think I have a couple of pretty strong companies left in me, so it's time to go build something awesome. So I'll be going back, hiding in the mountain cabin somewhere, completely out of public sight for a few years once the book is ready. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the interview.